Obviously, before you start with any Fusion CAD, you have to install Fusion 360. Now, you might already have Fusion 360 installed, or you know how to install Fusion 360. If you do, then feel free to skip ahead and look to a later point in this video. But this part, I'll be showing you how to download Fusion 360. Now, first, what you need to go to is the Autodesk student portal. Make sure you're on the student portal and not the normal Autodesk software, because on there everything you actually do need to pay for. I'll put this link in the video description as well. After you're there, you need to sign in. I have already signed in. You should be able to just use your school email for this. And as you can see, because I'm using educational access, I have to refresh this basically every single year. Now once you're here, you can scroll down. You basically get access to everything here. All of these softwares you do have access to. And well, in this case we'll be downloading Fusion 360, so you can simply click Get Product and it'll download Fusion 360. Now obviously I already have it, so I won't be downloading it. Now that you have Fusion 360 installed, I will show you some of the basic controls that you'll be using for Fusion 360. So first thing that you will want to do is click on your profile picture in the top right corner. After that, preferences. With this, you can see here on this page here, see pan, zoom, orbit shortcuts. I have it set to Tinkercad. Yours might be default to Fusion. This is, I just found easier to work with, but you can change it to whatever you want. But for my entire tutorial series, just keep in mind I'll be using Tinkercad controls. So some of your like orbit buttons, for example, might not be the same as what I'm using. Okay, now that your controls are set up correctly, let's actually talk about the controls in Fusion. So, there's basically, you could say, two types of main controls that you use in Fusion. First is pan, as you can see the pan button, which will, if I turn on origin, just have a frame of reference. You can move around. Or the orbit button, which lets you just change angle. Now, obviously, you use these if you don't have a mouse. But let's say you have a mouse, right? You should usually get a mouse if you want to CAD, because even touchpad is super annoying to work with sometimes. So with a mouse, if you click the middle mouse button and drag it around, that's pan. So again, you click down the middle mouse button and move the screen around. That will be pan if you can zoom with it as well. Now, if you hold down right click, that will be the button for orbit. As you can see, by holding down right click, I'm orbiting here. And the one thing to know, when you orbit, it kind of like defaults gets locked to whatever your center of your screen is. That's a point that's basically orbiting on, I'm pretty sure. So usually it doesn't mess something up, but unless you got placed like a component like way off onto the side and then you orbit, you know, it might sometimes mess things up a little bit. Another button you can click for orbit is pressing Shift plus middle mouse button. Now this is the default Fusion controls, and if you are in your settings you have on Fusion, you might notice if you hold down right click, something else shows up, which is with Shift right click. I'm not gonna go into detail about this menu, but if you see this, that just means you're using the Fusion control settings, not the Tinkercad one, which will be, well, you can't orbit by right clicking. You'll have to shift middle mouse button. Now another thing that you can use sometimes to help with viewing whatever you're working with is up here. If you can see here, if you click on any of the surfaces, like for example top, it will automatically move to the top view. Now let's say this is not an angle you want, you can click on these arrows to move it around. Now if you click on something like this, it will be at an angle, of course, like this is the corner. You can go on any face, and also there's a home button, which is the default home view. Now I'll be showing you how to make this in Fusion 360, which is basically a simple joint. As you can see, these two C channels are jointed together at a 90-degree angle. And to do that, first what you need to do is make a new file. You can click plus here, up here for new design. And before you do anything, you have to save this. you can do Control S, where there's a button up here to save. Name it whatever you want. And now that your file is saved, you can go to your wherever your part library is located. In this case, probably for everyone watching this video, will be here, VEX part library. And let's say I just want to put in a C channel. So once you have navigated the C channel part, you'll notice there's two types of files, or there might not be when you're actually looking at this, depending on how late into the future you're looking at this. But anyways, the parts you want to use, like the ones that has a, what do you even call that, a cube instead of the FVD files. These files somehow got messed up and you basically can't use them. So these are the files that you actually want to use. So let's say you want to put in this 15 long C channel into the design. There's two ways to do that. First way will be simply dragging this in like this. If I let go, it'll come in. Or something that doesn't work well, what I prefer to do is right click and then this button called insert into current design. Now that your part is inserted in, as you can see, you have a lot of dials in the middle. You have a pop-up menu as well to work with. So what this does in here is letting you move your component around. And you can see this, each dial turns it. Each of these like little, what do you call that? Rectangle, like squares, they let you move the object on the certain plane. And if you just hold the dot in the middle, you can drag it wherever you want. And of course, you can type any value in here that you want. Now you have this here. Now let's say I want to insert into another C channel into this design. As you can see, you just move it around wherever you want and just enter is fine. But how do you actually attach these two C channels together? So there's a button in Fusion that's called joint. Now this is only for components, which in this case everything is a component because you're inserting them into another design. So basically you're inserting an already completed design, in this case a component, into a design that you're currently working on, which if it's not looking at this through VEX, it will be something like maybe assembling multiple parts together into the main product you're actually going to make. In the case of VEX, it will just be putting parts together to create a robot. So to do that, you can press joint up here. You might not have this button. It will be under assemble, or press the shortcut J. Now once you press joint, you can see this here pops up, and you'll have this as well, but it might not be exactly where it is on my screen. So when you're jointing some two components together, you need to essentially fix 2 points together. And the Fusion CAD library works with all of these sketch dots or sketch points that you can use. And so as you can see, I can just hover over a sketch point and then select it. Once this is selected, you can see here that it's hollowed out, meaning you have to select a different component to join it to. In this case, I'm going to be joining it to this component here. Let's say I want to attach this to this point here. As you can see, they overlap with each other, which in real life is not something that would actually happen. So to fix this, you can simply press the flip button. It will flip it. Now as you can see here, a similar dial also pops up on your screen. You have move in the directions, and you have rotate. So I want to rotate this, let's say, to 90 degrees perpendicular to the other C channel. And obviously you can type these into wherever you want. Now you notice this drop down here. You have multiple types of joints. I won't be going into what they do now. I will go into them in a future video. After that's done, you can just simply press OK. Now you can see you have two C channels are jointed together. Let's say I want to move the C channel around. As you can see, I can move this around right now, but if I control Z this, on here, I cannot. Now obviously you don't want your, let's say this is just this, right? If you have your entire robot designed out, you can drag components around, you can drag your entire robot around. Now if some parts of your robot are not like lined up well with each other, that will mess everything up. Obviously you don't want that to happen. So what could you do to fix that? Now you can fix that by selecting one of the C channels in this design by either coming to here, selecting it, or you can double left click on the C channel, which will select the component. Note, if you just click it once, it won't select the entire component. You want the entire component to be selected. After that, you can right click, and there's a button called ground. What ground does is it basically fixes that component in place in this design. And now if you notice here, if I try to drag anything around, I can't, because this C channel is grounded. And this rigid joint, what it does is it locks the C channel at this angle that we have set, and at the position we have set relative to the other C channel. Basically, this C channel cannot move anywhere. Now that's where other different type of joints could actually allow you to simulate movement of the C channel, but for vast majority of VEX Cad will be rigid joints. There's a lot of other joints involved as well, but for I would say about 60 to 70% would just be rigid joints. And with just knowing rigid joints, you can actually do a lot of things. For first couple months basically of me doing CAD, I've never actually used any other type of joints. So this is actually all you need to know to start your first design. Now you can try to challenge yourself by following the clawball instruction. You can find that online. And actually, if you go to A7265 here, have clawball parts. I've actually put all the parts that the clawball has into this folder for you. You could try to follow instruction online and using rigid joints create a clawbot basically. And once you're done that, we'll be using the clawbot to move on to more complex sort of CAD designs and talk about other things. Now if you have any trouble during this process, you can obviously try to reach out to me, or reach out to each other or whoever teacher might be for help.